Testing 1, 2, 3.
All right.
All right. We're back. I was getting kind of used to this.
All right, the motion was that Senate Bill 831, the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and the substitute's agreed to. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The substitute came after lengthy discussion. Again, before the meeting, folks worked out the agreement, and the bill came, and everyone was in support of it, and it was recommended to report the substitute on a 5-0 vote.
All right, there's a
So
motion and
moved.
a second. Let me move a second. Second, that Senate Bill 831 in the substitute be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15-0, the substitute's agreed to. Senator Suderline, that completes your health report? Is
That
correct?
completes the Health Subcommittee report. I've got the Health Professions Subcommittee report if you're ready for that.
We are ready for that, so if you would head forward with that.
The first bill, Mr. Chairman, was your bill, Senate Bill 370, where we heard from some folks that had concerns with the bill because they had traveled, but we decided it best not to take action on the bill then, and I think we're going to take that up later today, so I'd move that bill by temporarily.
Okay, eventually, I think through some discussions, I think that I would hope that we would carry the bill over for the year. We're still truth seekers trying to figure that out, and if you're inclined to make that motion now, we can carry it over for the year.
I'd be happy to. Senator, or Mr. Chairman, I move that Senate Bill 370 be carried over to the 2019 session.
The motion is second that Senate Bill 370 be carried over to the 2019 session. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15-0. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next bill, Senate Bill 505, came from Senator Carrico. This is about establishing the requirements for a new licensure in the Commonwealth, which would be a Doctor of Medical Science. This is a degree program that's being developed across the border in Tennessee. I think there's broad support for this in our subcommittee, but it was because the degree is being developed in Tennessee, and Tennessee's still not quite there yet. It was suggested that we continue it to the 2019 session, and I would so move that now.
This motion is second that the bill be carried over.
Can I just,
Yeah, Senator Carrico.
just briefly, and I know this has already come through subcommittee and been vetted, but this is a bill that I had last year, like Senator Suderline said, that's being vetted in Tennessee. LMU, Lincoln Memorial University, is offering, and I think Lynchburg, Liberty has a program also like it. And this is what we see as a potential help for our region to get doctors in rural areas. And hopefully with the vetting process in Tennessee that's going on right now, there'll be some language and legislation that comes out of the Tennessee legislature this year that we can mirror and try to bring all the parties together. So,
Senator Carrico, I know you've worked hard on this, and I think it is one of the pathways for some of the solution down there. So hopefully we'll learn something and be ready to take action next year. So there's a motion and a second that the bill be carried over to the 2019 session. That is Senate Bill 505. All those in favor record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15-0. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill, Senate Bill 812, from Senator Barker. We recommended report 6-0 on that one. And
So motion is second that Senate Bill 812 be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
Ayes 15, nays 0. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 829, also from Senator Barker. It's dealing with providing our military personnel that the skills they develop there we develop a system so that they would be recognized under our licensing system here in the Commonwealth. There's a substitute, and I would move the substitute.
There's a motion and a second that the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, no, and substitute's agreed to. Senator Suderline.
There was broad support for this bill as well, and we recommended report on a 6-0 vote, and I would so move that.
Motion is second that the bill be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0, the bill is reported. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 832 from Senator Carrico. This adds Schedule 5 controlled substances where prescriptions required and naloxone to the list of covered substances that must be reported through the PMP, and we recommended report on a 6-0 vote.
There's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0, the bill is reported. Senator Suderline.
Senate Bill 918 from Senator Eben. We have a substitute that I would move adoption of.
All right, let me just see the substitute, make sure it's what we talked about, David.
Would you like me to speak to the substitute, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
So the issue that Senator Eben was trying to address in the legislation is several years ago there was a federal law that required states to suspend health licenses to students that were not making their student loan payments. That federal requirement is no longer before us, and he wanted to go the way that several other states have by removing it. The thought being if the folks aren't making their loan payment, taking away their primary means of income is not going to help them make it any quicker. And so that's what his initial bill did. There's a companion bill working its way through the House that was broader, not specifically just to health professions. And one thing that I raised in committee that I think you'll want to point out to Chairman Ruff of General Laws is several of these other positions or professions are ones that we usually handle in general laws. General Laws is not planning to meet again on Senate bills before crossover, but I think if the two of you had a conversation, we'd probably be okay.
Yes, sir. Okay. What was the motion on the bill then?
Once we had the substitute before us on the broader bill, we recommended report on a 6-0 vote.
All right, there's a motion and a second that the bill be reported and the substitute. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0, the bill is reported. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final bill that we considered was Senate Bill 973 from Senator Vogel, Track and Trace Program. There was a lot of discussion on this bill for multiple weeks, and it was ultimately decided that the best thing to do would be to continue it to the 2019 session and that was a unanimous vote of our subcommittee, and I would so move that.
I think the patron's okay with that, and so there's a motion and a second that Senate Bill 973 be continued to the 2019 session. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0, the bill is reported. Senator Suderline, Senator Donovan, thank you for all the help you've had in that subcommittee. Up next is Senator Carrico's subcommittee in public education. Senator Carrico, you ready to go, sir?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Senator Carrico.
Mr. Chairman, we had two Stanley bills, 169 and 170. 169 had a concept, and I don't see him here, of amendments that would make the bill harmless as far as what VSHL would have to do for a robotic team competition. I don't know yet that he's got those amendments to Tom. but if we can just move past that one to 170. He also had one as far as what the public school student discipline bill would be for grades 3 through 6 involving drug offenses, firearm offenses, and criminal acts. And there's a substitute to that, and I would recommend the substitute.
There's motion and second that the substitute be reported. All those in favor will say aye. Those no. Substitute's agreed to. Senator Carrico.
So what this bill does now is it guides the expulsion of a student for drug offenses, firearms, and criminal acts, grades 3 through 6. And we saw this bill last year, and now it gets it in the proper form in which it was a recommendation to report on 5-0 vote, and I'd so move.
There's a motion and a second that Senate Bill 170 be reported. And Senator Carrico, I know there's been a lot of discussion about this
Yeah,
bill.
I think
and
everybody's
it's okay.
happy now.
Everybody's good. Senator Black.
Mr. Chairman, just very briefly, I'm going to vote no on this because I'm very leery of any kind of bill that compels teachers to retain students who are disruptive and detract from the educational experience of all of the other children. That's really my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there is a motion and a second that Senate Bill 170 be reported. All those in favor record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 10, nays 5.
10 to 5, the bill is reported. Senator Carrick.
Next was Senator Favola's bill. Senator Favola's bill had a companion bill rolled into it, Senate Bill 347, which is Senator Wexton's, and I would recommend that we roll those two bills together.
There's a motion and a second that be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's agreed to. Senator Carricker.
These two bills now, Mr. Chairman, deal with performance-based assessments. It would propose that performance-based assessments be required to be an adequate replacement for the relevant standards of learning assessment by requiring the students to demonstrate the knowledge and skills required by relevant standards of learning and one or more critical thinking methods. The committee had a very robust discussion about it. It was a recommendation that we PBI on a 3-2 vote.
Mr. Chairman, would it be okay if we sent this to the future of public education, at least the subject matter, after we do that? Is that?
That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. There's a motion.
Uh,
Yeah, both. Yeah, they roll together. There's a motion is second that the bills be PBI'd, but that subject matter be reported to the new Commission on Public Education. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0. The bills are PBI, but then the subject matter is sent to the Commission on Future Public Education. Senator Carrico.
Next was Senate Bill 349. This is Senator Pete's bill. We had Senate Bill 257, Senator Suderline, Senate Bill 409, Senator McDougal, Senate Bill 548, 549, 551, 558, Senator Donovan. Senate Bill 723 was Senator Peake, and Senate Bill 863, Senator Sturdivant. We rolled all these bills into Senate Bill 349. These were all dealing with teacher shortages and how to address those teacher shortages. And now we have a substitute with all these bills rolled in, addressing those subject matters in which to try to address the teacher licensure shortage, and I would move the substitute.
All right, there's a motion second that the substitute be agreed to, which includes the incorporation of all those. Okay. The clerk would rather us vote on the incorporation first, so there's a motion to incorporate the bills in a second. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
Senator,
I'd move the substitute.
that is agreed to. Senator Carrico moves that substitute be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. And the substitute's agreed to. Senator Carrico.
All right, this bill now addresses a lot of things for teacher shortages. It requires the Board of Education to provide for assurance of provisional license valid for a period not to exceed 5 years. And I'll let Senator Peake, if he'd like, to go through just real quickly and touch on the highlights of his bill now that it's become a substitute, and it was a recommendation that we report 5-0.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Senator Peake?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not go through each of the bills, but as you saw, there were 6 or 7 separate bills with 6 or 7 different patrons, all trying to address the teacher shortage and making it easier for the local Board of Supervisors to make the determination of whether they could keep teachers who might not be fully accredited or might be coming up on a deadline of 3 years. Now, we have worked extensively with various education groups. I will say that the governor's education group, one of them has still had several changes they wanted to make that we felt we could not make or would really gut the whole purpose of the bill. I think this bill, as it stands now, has done the best that we can to incorporate all the patrons' intentions and to meet the current shortage that we have with teachers.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about all these bills that have been rolled into Senate Bill 349? I think there's general agreement out there. I know that there's a lot of people that don't want to dilute the Virginia license with any of these things, but I think there's general agreement. If not, there's a motion and a second that the substitute for Senate Bill 349 be agreed to. All those in favor record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15-0, the bill is reported. Senator Carrico.
Next was Senate Bill 491, Senator Sternovitz's bill. This one is dealing with the standards of learning assessments. Basically, the bill requires the Department of Education to calculate any potential or realized savings from implementation of the bill to reduce the number of the type of required standards of learning assessments. And it was recommended to PBI on a 3-2 vote, and I'd so move.
All right, so motion is second to bill be PBI. Just to be clear on this is one I've tracked for a month. This bill would really take away all of our state ability to determine how our standards go. It would turn it all over the federal government. Very, very concerning about doing that. But anyway, the clerk. Anyway, there's a motion to second that the bill be PBI'd. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 14, nays 1.
13-1, the bill is reported. Senator Carrico.
Senate Bill 605, Senator Eben, I don't see him here, but this is the bill that you had some concerns about that he, on that day, was working language out for, and hopefully there was no recommendation to that, and I asked him to be at full committee to explain.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can handle it. Tom, do you have the amendment for this bill, sir? So let me give you the overview. What Senator Evans wanted to do is very good. He wants to make sure that it's called "Don't Pass the Trash," which means you don't continue. It's fantastic. We've been talking to the Courts Committee about the implications on civil lawsuits and that type of thing. And I think Tom had a way to fix that, but also to continue to mandate that that the trash not be passed, if you will. So Tom, can you help us with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 34, add subsection D, nothing in this section shall be construed to create a private cause of action.
Is there a motion on the amendment? Motion second that the amendment be agreed to.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we adopt that amendment, I think there's a substantive issue here, because I'm not going to vote for the amendment.
Sure.
And we could have this discussion on the floor, have it in committee. I don't know if
No,
Senator.
it's perfect to have it now. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, let me just, and I realize that the audience is probably oblivious to what we're talking about, but this was a bill that would have essentially forbidden a school district to give a positive recommendation for someone that had been accused of a sexual incident with a student. And there are some protections built in here, and obviously it's a topical issue. And the amendment is whether or not a cause of action is created. And I understand what the chairman's point is. We don't want to pass a law which suddenly opens up a whole new field of litigation, but there already is a field of litigation here. And that's my concern, is that already people that, fail to warn others about sexual misconduct and that person's hired somewhere else can, under certain circumstances, be liable for a cause of action. So I worry that we're cutting off an existing remedy if we pass this amendment. That's all I had to say.
Senator Peterson, if the amendment is passed and if the bill passes, I think the bill is really important. But if you don't mind working with me, I think we've got a similar desire to make sure that maybe we aren't cutting off things that are happening now. This comes from the federal ESSA standard. This bill goes a good bit beyond what ESSA wanted to do, which is good. I think we need to go beyond what ESSA's doing, but it also sets up an opportunity for a lot of litigation to teachers who may incidentally recommend someone outside their scope. So we'll work together. But there's a motion and a second that the amendment be agreed to. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the amendment's agreed to. And there's a motion on the bill as amended. There's a motion and a second that the bill as amended be reported. And I think that Senator Eben, who's not here, was fine with this. He would rather maybe another amendment that Senator and I can talk about, but I think he's okay with this. So there's a motion, second, the bill be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 14, nays 0, one abstention.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention. Senator Howell also has a bill that will be very helpful. That it's a registry bill that helps us track these people and cross state lines. It's upstairs somewhere or passed down, but it's also a very good piece of this. So Senator Carrico.
Next, Senate Bill 664. There is a substitute that was language that was being worked out on the graduation requirement clock hours. Basically, it allows the Board of Education in its graduate requirements to permit passing scores on industry certifications approved by the local school board, and any instructions received, classwork, completed studies towards such passing scores count towards the requirement of a student receiving 140 clock hours. And I'd move the substitute.
Motion is second that the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor will say aye. Those no, substitute's agreed to. Senator Carrico.
Mr. Chairman, this bill with the substitute was recommended report on 5-0 vote, and I would so move.
Motion is second that the bill be reported with substitute. That is Senator McPike's 664. All those in favor record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15 to 0, the bill is reported. Senator Carrico.
Senate Bill 786, Senator Surville's bill. There was a substitute for 786. Basically, this is a online course virtual program that would exempt a student from being charged tuition fees for enrolling in that online course if they fall within the free and reduced lunch category. Those tuition and fees would be exempt.
Okay.
And every student enrolled in the course is provided and offered free of charge a computer and other electronic devices necessary to take the course. And it was recommended to report on a 4-1 vote for the substitute.
There's a motion, second, that substitute be agreed to. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Substitute's agreed to. There is, if I could, I know Senator Surville and I have been working on this for a long time. We're not going to get testimony, but basically, for right now, it is limited to Planning District 8, but we need to make sure that K-12 and also virtual Virginia is not negatively impacted, and I know the senator is working with us on that. But for right now, if you're okay, we'll do this. We'll continue to work our way, and if we go to conference on it, we'll put you on a conference and work it out. Is that okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there, Senator Carrico.
Recommend a report on a 5-1 vote, and I'd so move.
There's a motion, second, that the bill be reported in the substitute. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 14, nay 0.
14-0, the bill is reported. Senator Carrico.
Last bill, Senate Bill 936, there was a recommendation that we
Continue to next year.
continue it till 2019 and refer it to the Commission on Future Public Education. Great idea. I think it's something that we really need to look at. And it basically establishes a standard of achievement for career and technical education and helps us with creating a prepared workforce as we move into this new way of trying to train our students to go out into the workforce.
All right, there's a motion, second, the bill be continued to 2019 with the subject matter going to the future of public education. Is there a second on that? There is. This is a great idea. The problem that we're having is the federal ESSA standards does set down minimums, and we do need to make sure that they coordinate this subject matter with math, history, science, and English, and we're going to work with Senator Wagner to do it. He's okay with this approach. So there's a motion and a second that the bill be carried over to 2019 session with the information going to the future of public education. All those in favor will record your vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nay 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill is continued. Senator Carrico.
Last bill I had was Senate Bill 953. This is Senator Dees' bill. This is requiring health instruction to incorporate standards of recognition on multiple dimensions of health, including mental health. There was a group of students there that brought this to the attention of the idea to Senator Dees. There was a recommendation that we report on a 401. I was the abstention. The one thing that I feel that we have got to start recognizing, hearing testimony from the Board of Education, they are already implementing this in that health classes, and the health classes. The Board of Education has already begun to set up this standard, and we're dictating in code that they do it when they're already doing it. And I just felt like it was something that we need the Board of Education to just move ahead on, not to be putting it in the code of Virginia, that they're something that they're already doing. And it was recommended report 4-0.
Recommendation is the bill be reported. All those in favor will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 12, nays 3.
Ayes 12, nays 3, and the bill is reported. Senator Carrico, does
And that would complete my report, except for Senator Stanley. I don't see him here. Just to give you an idea of what that bill was going to do, is going to set up a competition in robotics. And it had to be done by 2020 or 2021. But there were some concerns that if the school divisions didn't enter into that, then that would affect any of their competitions in prohibiting them from being able to be a part of ESHL. That would be football, basketball, or anything. And he had said that he had language that would remove them from that, but we haven't seen that language. So
Okay, we'll let it go by temporarily. Is that okay with
Okay.
you, sir?
All right.
So without objection, Senate Bill 169 will go by temporarily. I would say that as the clerk, just as we kind of wrap up on the other block of bills that are coming up, if Senator Stanley could come up for two of his bills, that includes the 175 House bill from Senator Poindexter and his bill, that would be helpful. So Senator Carrico, thank you. I know you had an enormous docket the entire time that we've been here. We're very, very grateful, you and your subcommittee and your work. All right, so next up, I think we'll take up the bills that are on the list that relate to the issue of COPN. So the idea, I think, is that we would get an understanding of what the bills do, and there's some patrons here, and we'll hear quickly from those patrons on what those bills do. I'm hopeful that we will roll the ones that we desire to into one bill. None of these are big changes. They tend to be exemptions. Except for one bill, we're having a little bit of a problem kind of figuring out how to roll in the bill that relates to the psych beds. I just don't think it's easy to roll in, so I think it's more appropriate that that bill be kept separately. So with that, there are patrons that are here. Senator Spruill, do you mind just giving me a quick primer on your bill, and then we'll hear from each of the bills, and then we'll move forward with a public comment period that will kind of encompass all of them. Is that okay with you, sir?
Would you also permit have a Dr. Gibson here to give a couple of minutes when I finish? I have a doctor here, Dr. Gibson.
Yeah, what we'll do, if that works for you, we'll hear him in a public comment period on all of them.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, we want to hear from him. So, Senator, you have a bill, and it's before you guys as Senate Bill 365.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. If I would be, the topic would be certificate of public need exception. This authorized the state commission to accept, review, and issue a certificate of public need for the establishment of a new ambulatory surgery center located in District 23. They will provide orthopedic service for acquisition for certain medical condition. There's no impact on this. The bill will not have an impact according to the Virginia Department of Health. The impact that we would have on the Commonwealth Department of DMS. DMS had indicated that such impact likely to negative because of an overall reimbursement freestanding imaging service. And we're talking about District 23, and this was put in because, I'll tell you why I put it in, it's because starting in March, Anthem will no longer stop paying for MRI service at the hospital. As you know, most state employees have Anthem. In Chesapeake, this will leave only one option for Anthem patients to get a MRI. Last year, during the big snowstorm and ice storm, one MRI center went down, and people had to wait more than 10 days to get this service. This service is desperately needed for the surrounding areas. Atlantic Orthopedic is being able to provide this service on site, will allow patients in District 23 to be able to have a proper access to service. Now, let me tell you what we're saying, that we are talking about for this service from this company, Mr. Chairman, that the application would have to at least be in business at least 15 years. They will have employees more than 20 positions, and they have been in operation at least 5 locations. We're talking about District 23. Now, I'm not talking the whole state. I'm concerned about 23, when mostly Hampton Roads, when people are having problems in getting an MRI and receive other service. So that's why this came up, Mr. Chairman. So if I could get Dr. Gibson to come out and give a few words, and then I'll later on.
Just in a minute, if
Yes,
you don't
sir.
mind, but you did a great job giving us the context, and I think a lot of people have looked over each one of these in implication, but let us go to all the patrons, and then we'll hear your comments from your doctor. How
Yes,
about
sir.
that?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator McClellan, thank you for coming today, and you have, in front of us today, you have 354.
That's right. Senate Bill 354 is for a certificate of public need for new ambulatory surgery center in Planet District 15 for ophthalmologic services. This was put in at the request of Dr. Susan Everhart, who is here and can give you more details on the issues that she's faced. She has a practice in Ashland, but serves patients from a widespread area, and has just been having difficulty getting OR time to perform this surgery. And she can explain in more detail during the public comment some of the difficulties she's had.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's
Thank
very
you.
kind. We'll hear from your individual in just a minute. Is that
Thank
okay
you.
with you?
Yep.
Okay, good. Is Senator D. Steph here? Okay, so we'll go then, why don't we go to Senator Donovan? Why don't you just briefly go over your item, and then we'll hear from Senator Cosgrove. You can do it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My proposal would allow for an MRI to be in Planning District 23. fairly non-specific, but it's basically the same concept. Competition, I do have somebody to speak to it during public comment, but it's basically offering some competition to an orthopedics practice that is there and is in need of improving efficiencies and lowering costs for their patients.
Great, thank you. Next up, Senator Cosgrove, and I think you have an amendment that you wanted to consider on your bill, which
Yes,
is
Mr. Chairman.
848.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is a substitute.
All right, there's a motion seconded that substitute be agreed to. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Substitute's agreed to. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator 848 as a substitute would basically put a moratorium on freestanding emergency departments within a 30-mile radius of the city of Chesapeake. Mr. Chairman, with all we're looking at COPN, basically what we want to do is just have a one-year moratorium, so nothing gets started and then has to stop.
20 years, we'll make a motion.
Yes.
All right, this is in front of us already, and there's on line 11, after within, there could be a motion to strike 35 and insert 20.
I'd move that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion is second that that amendment be agreed to. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And motion is agreed to. Senator Cosgrove, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next up, Senator Vogel has a bill. Is Senator Vogel here? If not, I will kind of talk about that one just in a minute. Up next is Senator Peterson. Senator Peterson, you want to tell us about yours?
My bill is Senate Bill 806. It deals with MRI service in Planning District 8. So it would apply solely to Planning District 8 and improving the accessibility to MRI diagnostics. I can give more details, but at this point, I'll just introduce it.
Thank you for that help. Next up is Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My bill, Senate Bill 266, is related to neonatal intensive care units and the Certificate of Public Need process. The Roanoke Valley, which I represent, has two major health systems serving it. One has a top-level NICU, and the other is trying to obtain a mid-level NICU. This is a process that we've been working on for several years in a bipartisan effort. If you look on LIS, you'll see that Senator Edwards, my Democrat colleague who represents Roanoke City, where the hospital that currently has the top-level NICU, he's the co-patron of the bill, and my district that has the hospital seeking the mid-level NICU. We are in total agreement of this and have been working for this for several years. One thing that's different about my bill is it doesn't require the commissioner to grant the certificate of public need for the NICU at Lewis scale, which is where it would be, where we've been seeking it for years. What it does is it simply says you can no longer take into consideration what the impact on another hospital will be. The reason for that is, of course, there's going to be an impact when there's a monopoly. When a monopoly has a new competitor, there's an impact, and that would be what would happen if the NICU went in there. And you're going to hear some great testimony from Roanoke Valley medical providers in a little bit. I can talk about this all day if you want. There's a really good case for it. Thank you, Senator Spruill.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Suderline. Up next is Senator DeSteff here. If we could see if we can contact Senator DeSteff. There is a similarity between Senate Bill 236 and also Senator Spruill's bill, but there are a couple of little items that we're going to have to look at. So we'll do that. Let me just tell you about Senator Vogel's bill. Senator Vogel's bill is a imaging bill for the city of Winchester. We have talked to Senator Vogel about that one. There are a couple of complications on that one given the regional areas, and I'm going to ask that that bill go, if there's a motion that bill would go by for the day, for the year.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second that Senate Bill 842 will go by to the 2019 session. Very good. Very good. So Senator DeSteff would be of value to be here for his bill, but he's not here yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from both sides, both in favor and in opposition to the bills. We're going to kind of do that together. Yeah. So what we'll do, as clerk has corrected me, we will vote on Senator Vogel's bill, which is 842 to be carried over for the year. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
Ayes 15, no 0, and the bills, that bill will go by for the year. What we'll do, Senator Lucas and Senator Howell, are you okay if we put about 10 minutes or so on this? Does that sound okay? Okay. All right, so we're going to put a 10-minute clock on those that are in favor and those that are in opposition to the bills, and we're going to hear those first. So first up, those that are in favor of the bills, if you would come forward, and if we have a time problem with that, we'll do it. So it's very, very important if we do this, that if you have written comments, that you submit to us those written comments, so that we don't have to read our comments that go through. So those that are here in favor, Senator Spool, you have a physician that wants to speak?
Yes, sir.
We'd love to hear from him.
Dr.
Okay,
Gibson from
very good.
Atlanta Orthopedic.
Okay, very good.
I am not Dr. Gibson, and I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, but I am Ann Hughes, and I am representing the Coalition to Reform Certificate of Public Need. And thank you so much for your time and your patience this morning dealing with these bills. The coalition was formed out of a sense of frustration trying to move the mark on Certificate of Public Need and begin to dismantle what is perceived to be a burdensome set of regulations that have not achieved the goal that they were originally intended to achieve, and that is to contain and or lower healthcare costs. What we're trying to accomplish with these individual carve-out bills is to begin to move in that direction and to be able to put more money back into the patient's pocket and put choice and control into the patient's hands as to where they access their healthcare services, giving them the options of a lower cost environment within which to get a lot of these things done. And with that, I will turn the rest of the time over to our physicians.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, and Senator Sproul for bringing this bill, Senate Bill 365, exception bill, forward. I'm here really to speak on behalf of patients. We're all patients. I see several friends here, and I don't see any enemies, and we're all patients at some point. Obviously, it's on behalf of our exception bill, but we're in healthcare, we're looking at increasing access, driving down cost, maintaining or improving quality, and promoting value-based healthcare. This is sweeping the nation. It's a paradigm shift. I'm Wilfred Gibson, as introduced. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. My specialty is hip and trauma or fracture care. I work at Atlantic Orthopedic Specialists in Southampton Roads, Virginia. I'm here from as a representative of the Virginia Orthopedic Society. I'm also a member of our Medical Society of Virginia who supports this. And I'm speaking in support, as you heard, Senate Bill 365, and it's in Planning District 23. Generally, Ann gave you a brief synopsis. COPN was created in Congress in the late 70s, early 80s to restrict access in an ill-fated plan to decrease Medicare costs. It failed. It was repealed federally in the early 80s. Twice now, the DOJ and the FTC have recommended repeal of state COPN laws. They're anti-competitive, and they support a monopolistic behavior. That we've had 15 states that have accomplished repeal. Virginia has failed. So our AOS, my group, has failed in an attempt to push through an imaging center through a traditional COPN process. Gotcha. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm here to answer questions. There's many things that are driving up the cost, and that has to do with the site of service differential. Hospital-based imaging and surgery centers cost 30 to 40% more. I don't want to hold up others in behalf, but we need the COPN exception
Doc,
to maintain competitive.
You've done great. Well done. Senator Sproul is glad you're here. We also will have, if you can control your individual, if you could maybe stay within a minute or less, that would be very, very helpful. David?
Thank you, Senator Newman. My next two speakers will stay within a minute or less. We've got Dr. John Harding, who's a MD and OBGYN, feels strongly in support of my bill, and Elena Bernardo, who's a registered nurse in the Roanoke Valley, and they will be very quick.
Great. Thank you for coming today.
Good morning. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is John Harding. I'm practiced obstetrics and gynecology. We need a NICU at Lewis Gale. I was a call physician when a patient came in at 24 weeks, a couple days in active labor. We had to deliver that baby. I informed her that we would contact Carillion and have the NICU team come. Unfortunately, the NICU team was not available. That infant died. We're delivering over 900 babies a year. This will happen again. It's not if, but when. We need that NICU service. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Doctor. Yes, welcome. Hi.
Hi, good morning. My name's Elena Bernardo. I'm speaking about Senate Bill 266. I myself had my child at Lewis Gale Hospital. It was my hospital of choice. I was born there 35 years ago. And my son was born via cesarean section. And when he was born, he suffered something called transient tachypnea of the newborn, needing a NICU service. The advanced level of care that he needed was across town away from me. And I was there on a table and couldn't take care of him, couldn't see him, he couldn't be with me. So he was taken from me across town. If we had the NICU at Lewis Gale, where we have very good staff, I wouldn't have gone through that. As a matter of fact, I was discharged a day later and didn't even get my own healing that I needed after having surgery myself. So we really do need a NICU there.
Thank you for coming. It's very nice of you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Up next. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Suzanne Everhart. I'm an ophthalmologist practicing in Ashland, Virginia. I'm out in the country. I'm the only ophthalmologist between Fredericksburg and Richmond when I started practice 24 years ago. Currently, there's been a federal law that's been passed called MIPS. MIPS is a merit incentive-based payment system that's going into effect next year for physicians. We're going to be graded on the costs that we carry to Medicare and Medicaid recipients. We're going to be penalized if we're operating in an outpatient department of a surgery center. Why? We're going to be penalized because they charge 30% more than an ambulatory surgery center. So there is no ambulatory surgery center. I've enjoyed a wonderful relationship with Memorial Regional Bon Secours Hospital System for 20 years. I've been on call for the ER. I've been on call for my practice 24/7. I'm loyal. I went to the CEO of Bon Secours Richmond and I said, look, we've got this coming down the pike. I'm 70% Medicare patients and Medicaid patients. You've got ENT, you've got all these other doctors at this surgery center, and we need you to convert to an ASC. Well, Doc, I'm sorry, we can't afford to do that because I got to talk to that board and they're interested in our bottom line. I'm interested in my patients. I've asked the hospital, you've got to look at this. It's coming down next year from the feds. I have no control over it. I want to stay at my hospital. But I can't afford to. I can't afford a COPN. I need an exemption to build a surgery center in Ashland to continue to take care of patients.
Great.
Very much appreciate it.
Doctor, thank you for coming today. Yes, sir, welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, Senator.
They're here to speak on one Pacific bill, Senator Cosgrove bill. They're not here on the other bill. They're just on one Pacific bill.
Okay.
So I thought you wanted to hear the ones on all this.
I think we'll hear, Cosgrove's is in the list, so we'll hear them now. And then there's one that's not in the list, and that is Senator Sturdivant's bill. We'll hear that one separate, if that's okay.
I thought maybe the people who must be on this COP and even though his is different, I thought you wanted to hear them first. Because they is here for just a Pacific bill.
Yeah, I think we'll hear them together, but that's fine. If we need to add a minute, we'll do it. But you're very kind. Thank you. Yes, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the committee, I'm Curtis Bird, Chesapeake Regional Healthcare. I'd like to thank Senator Cosgrove for bringing this bill forward. We support the substitute as presented, the one-year moratorium on freestanding EDs. The issue here is addressing a loophole in current law that does not require freestanding EDs to go through the certificate process. It's an issue of access and cost. These facilities, you have a map that we provided you of freestanding EDs in the Commonwealth. You'll notice it's very revealing. They are located near other emergency departments attached to hospitals, not in areas that need the access most. And it's also a cost issue. These are facilities that are charging full hospital rates, and the consumer is not aware of that when they go in. They think that they're going into an urgent care center, and it's not until they're getting their bill that they see that they've actually been duped. So we're just asking the state to put a moratorium on this issue so that it can look at it closer to make sure that we can address the issue of access and affordability.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Thank you. Yes, and I apologize, we just got a couple of minutes, but we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Or, Mr. Chairman, we got to be really nice to this guy because he's my doc, my ED doc, and I see him a lot.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Louis Siegel. I'm an emergency physician at Chesapeake Regional Healthcare in Chesapeake, Virginia, where I've practiced for the past 24 years. Freestanding Freestanding emergency department's ability to bypass COPN review process has always been a loophole that has never made sense. Access to health care is extremely important, but unregulated proliferation leads to weakening of needed hospitals that serve as tertiary care centers to provide health care for the needs of all patients who come this way. Requiring freestandings to go through this review process wouldn't mean that they wouldn't exist. It would help control the distribution of these resources with the goal of development in areas of need and not for purposes of profit margins. I ask you to support this.
Doc, thanks for coming today, and thank you for taking care of Senator Cosgrove. Yes, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Ben Fickenshire. I'm a physician. I too work in the emergency department at Chesapeake Regional, and I just wanted to speak in support of this bill. In an emergency such as a heart attack, time is of the essence, and that's not time to arrival in the emergency department, but rather time to definitive services in a hospital, such as at the hands of a cardiologist in a catheterization lab. And freestanding emergency departments exist with the absence of those definitive services. Patients in the time of need, in the time of an emergency, I don't believe are acting as consumers in a free market construct. I believe that they're acting to save their lives. They go to the closest place, and I think they're often anxious and confused when they end up in a place that can't provide those definitive services. So I ask in support of this bill.
Thank you for coming. That's very nice of you. Someone else here to speak? Hi, welcome. Are you here to speak in opposition? Support. Welcome.
Actually, different bill.
Which bill is
Senator
this?
Peterson's Bill 806.
Go ahead.
So I'm Karen Simonton, Mr. Chairman, Senator Newman, and I'm with Ortho Virginia. So Ortho Virginia is the largest multidisciplinary musculoskeletal center in the Commonwealth, and we are supporting patients both in Northern Virginia, Richmond, and Lynchburg. And I do have some information which I'm assuming I can present to the pages.
That's right.
So this is information from the Cigna website on fee structures for MRIs in Planning District 8. To give you some perspective on what the pricing differential is from hospital systems and those outside of the hospital system, and to give you some understanding of how competition does create opportunities in the cost place. But what I would say to you most specifically is it's really about patients. So my history is with Ortho Virginia and Lynchburg did actually get an MRI, a certificate of need, through the regular process. And the reason this was important is because in our planning district, we had been working with our hospital and our radiologists very closely to make sure that the reads for these images were done by musculoskeletally trained, fellowship-trained musculoskeletal radiologists. And we were unable in our community to get consistent reads. We were unable to get our community to support the hiring of enough of these fellowship-trained musculoskeletal readers to control quality. So patients in that district were paying 4 times as much for an MRI and then getting a read that wasn't correct. And we were unable in that district to control the read, even though we were responsible for the patient. And so it's about cost, but don't misunderstand that it's also about quality, because when you as the physician don't have control over the study and who reads it, you're basically having to take control of the patient's care and manage their care with information that is not of a quality standard.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Thank you very much. Very good. So is there anyone else? Are you here in favor or in opposition? All right. So what we're going to do for those people, because the amount of time has gone over, we're going to let the opposition or people with concern go for 12 minutes, but I'm going to let you have about 25 seconds. And are you in favor or in opposition?
I'm in favor.
All right, about 25 seconds, and then we'll give the same amount to the other side. Welcome.
So I'll cut my original comments down to 25 seconds. I'll read the most important paragraph, I think, of my comments. Despite the dramatic cost-cutting powers of the bill, SB 923, there remain those among us who will still struggle with a $200 to $300 copay at an ASC, which brings me to the most rewarding and humanitarian part of SB 923, a provision that requires an independent ASC to donate charitable surgical services to individuals who may not even have the $200 for an ASC copay, so that they too can have their surgical needs met in a most professional manner. It would be an unprecedented opportunity for low-income citizens of our community to have access to excellent surgical care with no strings attached.
Great. Perfect. You did so well. That was good. So, well done. So well done. Those that. Okay, that was your speaker. Oh, great. So if it's okay with you guys, what we'll do now is we will then go and set a 12-minute clock. Is that okay with those that have some concerns about the bill? And we will instead, let me stop that one. We'll let you begin. So Mark, welcome. Great to have you here.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you. I'm Mark Lawrence, Vice President of Carilion Clinic in Roanoke. As many of you know, we are the large safety net provider, a not-for-profit system serving most of Western Virginia along the I-81 corridor. I'm here to speak, and it's hard for me to do this with my good friend Senator Suderline, but we're here to speak against Senate Bill 266. Also with me this morning is Dr. Kim Dunsmore. Dr. Dunsmore is our chair of pediatrics at Carilion Children's, and she will have a few comments about quality. A couple of points I'd like to make, and then I'll yield to Kim. First, many of you in our chats have talked about the number one issue you hear from your constituents, and that is the escalating costs of health care. I would say to you, if that is a concern and the number one priority, then you need to look very carefully at this bill, because this bill is going to result in higher health care costs in the Roanoke area because of the duplication of services in an area where there's not a determined need for additional beds. At this point, we have a 60-bed specialties and subspecialty neonatal unit at Roanoke Memorial. Over the past 5 years, our average occupancy is about 68%. So on a given day, we have 16 to 18 open beds, and that's been a pretty consistent number over the past 5 years. If you look at our last year, for example, of our NICU days, the total number of days that babies were in our NICU, 2/3 of those were spent taking care of Medicaid babies. So that's an important distinction to consider as a part of this legislation. This bill does limit the health commissioner's criteria in which he or she would evaluate COPN applications, but it only applies to the Roanoke Valley area, Roanoke City, Roanoke County, Salem, Botetourt, and Allegheny. You create one set of criteria for Roanoke, and the rest of the state stays under the same criteria that currently exists. I would say to you that the Virginia way is not to create a patchwork of different regulations in different parts of the state. The other point I would leave with you this morning is that we have about 3,200 beds or 3,200 births a year at Roanoke Memorial. We are a high-volume birth center, a high-volume NICU. We provide services for 40 counties and cities in Southwest Virginia as well as Southern West Virginia, and are a critical part of that. The other thing I would leave you with is this. There is a reason that you don't have level 1 trauma centers at every hospital in Virginia. That's because those services are very high-level, high-specialty services that are also very expensive. And to duplicate these services is only going to drive up the cost. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience, and I'll ask Dr. Dunsmore to come up and address a couple of other points. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you very much. I know you've been very helpful with all this information. Thank you, sir. Yes, welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I wanted to point out a few things about quality and outcomes, because outcome actually matters. That's what we want, the best outcomes for our children. And as Mark pointed out, not every hospital in Virginia does bone marrow transplants or does heart transplants, and there's a good reason for that. You need to have them done at regional centers that have expert teams who see high volumes of patients so that they can treat those patients to the best outcomes, meaning that they can go into any situation and be able to handle it and handle the complications. The same is true for neonatal care. And so it is not just my recommendation, it's actually the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics that all small birth weight babies and young premature babies be born or transferred to high-level, high-volume NICU centers. And there's evidence for this because the low-volume, low-level NICUs have higher mortality rates for these infants. They do not have the specialized services such as pediatric surgeons, pediatric cardiologists, pediatric respiratory therapists, and pharmacists to deal with all of the complex problems that these babies have. And outcome is important. As Mr. Lawrence pointed out, we have a 60-bed specialty and subspecialty NICU in Roanoke that is not at capacity as it stands. We are able to take in these children and give them excellent outcomes, and we still have capacity for growth for this. What we want is access, yes, but access to the best outcomes, and that's at higher level, high volume NICUs. Thank you for your attention.
Doc, thank you so much for coming from Roanoke. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Prevet, representing Bon Secours Health Systems of Virginia.
Bon Secour, Virginia healthcare system is the only faith-based healthcare system in Virginia. Our name, Bon Secour, articulates our mission. We provide good help to all who seek our care. We treat those patients regardless of their ability to pay. That's our mission, not just a requirement. In our community, our charity care and the treatment of indigent patients is not only the right thing to do, it's our calling. We stand today opposed to those bills in both planning districts 23 and 15, as our service areas encompass Richmond and Hampton Roads. Last year, our charity care numbers our charity commitment allowed us to provide over 110 patient visits at no cost to those patients. Last year, and our fully funded Maryview Free Clinic, which is not funded by our business operations, but by our foundation, provided over 4,000 free prescriptions, and 25 indigent care patients were seen in our Maryview Free Clinic. If we are looking at how these COPN bills taken in individual isolated context would affect our overall ability to deliver that community care, that is why we'd be opposed to those. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much for coming. Yes, welcome, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Rhodes Rittenauer, and I'm also here on behalf of Bon Secour to speak in opposition to Senator McClellan's SB 354. And I'm also in the unenviable position of opposing a friend's legislation. But I feel compelled to do so because the motivation, at least part of the motivation to bring the bill was, as Senator McClellan said, because there is a challenge with access for eye surgeries in Hanover County. Bon Secour operates Memorial Regional Medical Center in the middle of Hanover County. We have 15 operating rooms that are all available for eye surgeries. We have 11 credentialed ophthalmologists at Memorial Regional, of which 5 completed 1,160 eye surgeries in 2017. So I'm before you today in opposition to the bill because there is no access issue for eye surgeries in Hanover County or the greater Richmond area. Also, my colleague Tom Brevet mentioned our charity care. And just to reiterate what he said, last year we saw 110,000 patients who couldn't pay us, and it cost us over $100 million. And I respectfully suggest that the COPN laws, while we're willing to talk about reform and be at the table for those discussions, are what empowers us to live out our mission and see those patients who can't pay. Thank you for your help.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jen Siciliano, Inova Health System, and I'm here to stand in opposition to SB 806, Senator Peterson's bill, respectfully. I'm not going to repeat all of the main talking points that my colleagues have said with regard to charity care and other things, access, but I wanted to make sure you know that there's 52 authorized MRI scanners in Northern Virginia used for diagnostic imaging. The pattern of MRI service development and growth is similar to that seen with CT scanning. MRI service volumes and the number of authorized scanners increased substantially during the decade of 2004 to 2015. The rapid growth seen a decade ago has moderated in recent years, most notably over the last 3 years in Northern Virginia. To be specific, average recent and current use of MRI scanning services region-wide has been and is about 80% of the planning standard specified in the Virginia SMFP. Capacity for outpatient use exists, and this COPN would simply create more capacity for that. We feel that there is capacity there, and given that, we would stand in opposition to this bill. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Paul Spidell with Centera Healthcare on Senate Bill 848, Senator Cosgrove's bill. Appreciate the amendment to slow this down and take a look at things instead of going to increased regulation right away, and also the conversations, Mr. Chairman, that we've had with Senator Cosgrove. One point of information for the committee. When we put up freestanding EDs, and I think others as well, a big part of the reason to do that is to decompress crowding in the current emergency departments that exist. So my concern is just that the 20 miles may be such a great distance from the affiliated licensed hospital that it may not allow us to actually decompress that crowding that we're looking to decompress. So that's a point of information, but happy to consider talking with you, or to continue talking with you about it.
I'm going to pause your clock.
Yes, sir.
I think Senator Cosgrove has been very reasonable to kind of work our way through this.
I
And if
agree.
you continue to work with him, maybe we can solve that. We don't want to cause a problem, nor does he, but if we can just
Understood.
get that done, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brent Rawlings for the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. We've heard from a lot of people today. Everybody wants the same thing: high-quality care, low costs. We're all in the same place. We all care for patients. One of the opening speakers talked about the need for COPN reform. And then behind that were a number of speakers asking for exemption from the law. Let's keep in mind what's going on here. These are specific requests for a specific applicant, for a specific individual, specific corporations to be exempted from law. We've got a constitution that describes that we shall not enact any local, special, or private law granting any corporation, association, or individual any special or exclusive right. No private corporation, association, or individual shall be specially exempted from the operation of any general law. That's exactly what we're asking to do here with these laws, and so they're problematic on their face. The other thing I wanted to point out, too, when we talk about the COPN process and the need to have some special treatment here, if you look at these planning districts, you see that the approval rates are actually pretty high. Planning District 23 for ASCs, there were 3 applications, 3 were approved. MRI, 5 applications, 5 approved. This is all in the DCOPN 5-year look back on the activity report. Same thing with PD15, 4 applications, 3 approved, 3 ASCs. PD8, MRIs, 8 approved, 2 denied. PD7, MRI, 1 applied, 1 pending. So we're talking about exemption from the law here. This is not COPN reform, and we need to think through the actions that we're taking. And so when we think through the approaches that we can take to reform the COPN law, we've been talking about it a couple of years now. There's clearly a need to free up some additional room for competition, for patient choice, and there's a way to do that through the existing law without having to circumvent it. I thank you for listening.
Great. I tell you, that was about perfect. That was really well. So, good. With that, we have kind of heard those sides. And then there is also, we're going to, maybe Senator Vogel, not right now, but in a minute, we're going to kind of bring your bill up, and we're going to talk about that. I had some concerns about that bill, but we do want to give you a chance to present. And so if there's a motion, just to get it in the proper place, is there a motion to roll the bills together? And that would end up being Senate Bill 923, Senate Bill 848, Senate Bill 806, Senate Bill 365, Senate Bill 354, Senate Bill 266, and then Senate Bill, yes, 266. Yep. Yes, 266, and also Senate Bill 235, and then I think that Senator DeStaff, we are going to end up striking in a moment your 236. Is that correct? Okay, so is there a motion? There's a motion and a second that those bills be rolled together. All those in favor say aye. Those no. The bills are rolled.
No.
Okay. Would you record your notes? Make sure we're very clear on the notes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question before we do that.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
We're rolling these bills into one vehicle.
Yes.
And that's normal procedure.
Yes, sir.
But I guess my question is, as far as 848 and the 1-year moratorium, what's going to be the disposition of that bill?
The bill will be included in the roll, so there will be a list, and that'll be one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. I understand there's some opposition. Let's just make sure we're very clear about the opposition. Some people do not want to. You raise your hands. Make sure you're clear. Okay. There are 4 no's. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So those bills have been rolled together. There is one bill left, and that is Senator DeStaff has a bill that we didn't hear anything about. Senator DeStaff, we're going to give you a couple minutes, but while you come up, is there a motion to strike Senate Bill 236, which is Senator DeStaff's bill? There's a motion and a second that the bill be stricken. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
15-0, the bill is stricken. Senator DeStaff, if you don't mind, sir, we're going to give you about a minute. We heard from all the bills before, but we wanted to hear briefly from your bill and consider the substitute, and then we'll move on.
All right, great, Mr. Chairman. We do have a substitute.
With a substitute, Mr. Chairman.
And since I struck 236, I'm only going to be here for half the time, so you should be pretty happy about that. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Keith Berger. He's truly the expert on this and can explain this much better than I can. Dr. Berger?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I had this down to 6 minutes on the ride up from Virginia Beach, and now I've got 30 seconds. I'll see what I can do. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist. I've been in practice in Virginia Beach for 37 years. 4 generations of my family are doctors. 33 years ago, we were the first GI practice to bring colonoscopy to the office as opposed to the hospital outpatient department. I've estimated that we've saved Medicare and patients somewhere between $4 and about $9 million in those 33 years. Currently, we are still unreimbursed for doing Medicare colonoscopy in the office. My center is a small one. It's already existing. I'm not building anything new. It is now at a point with physician cuts to Medicare that I will lose money on every Medicare patient I do in the office. The reason for the exception is that I can continue to provide my services. My practice is dedicated to cancer, colon cancer prevention, second leading cause of cancer death in Virginia and the United States, and in particular the Medicare population, which this bill affects, who are most affected. Obviously, an exception would allow me to continue to provide a service in a critical service area. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Well, Doctor, thank you for coming. During Senator D. staff, thank you. We've rolled your substitute into the other bills, and we're grateful for you coming today. We've stricken the other bill.
Thank you very much.
Great. With that, the bill is before us with those bills that I mentioned earlier, which do not include Senator D. staff's 236, Senator Sturdivant's 757, and also Senator Vogel's 842. Are there discussions or motions on the bills? Okay. Yeah, Senator Black.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have been working on the issue of trying to come up with some sort of a grand compromise between hospitals and the various providers of these services. And we've been doing it for a number of years. I mean, intensely, I would say, for the past 4 to 5 years. And every year we're almost there, and we're going to get there next year. And then the next year we bring it up again, and it gets put off for a following year. And I think the point has been reached where we simply have to do something. We have to move forward. This is not ideal to do a shotgun approach where we're going out and we're saying, well, we'll cherry pick this and that. But frankly, we have worked desperately to try to bring together the hospitals and the other individuals who want to set up these services. And I think we've reached a point where we simply have to move forward, and perhaps, if nothing else, by doing this, and if we are to vote these out, by doing this, we will perhaps break the logjam and impress upon the parties the seriousness of getting together and saying, look, let's come up with a comprehensive scheme. But in the meantime, my personal view is I want to see us move forward, and this is the only avenue that I see to accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we now have Senate Bill 266, which includes several of these. So speaking first to my primary component of it regarding the Salem NICU that we're hoping to do. The opponents of that provision of the now larger bill spoke about concerns about outcomes, but you also heard from actual medical professionals in my district about the negative outcomes that are occurring without the NICU right now. It almost sounded like there were hardly any children being born at Lewis Scale, but we have nearly 1,000 children born there every year. That's why Senator Edwards, who represents Roanoke City, where the other hospital is, supports my bill because it's an adjacent city to Salem. But just as you'll hear 5 miles, a lot of you know in Northern Virginia what 5 miles are like. Well, Electric Road's not unlike Northern Virginia. we've got so many stoplights there, and in that golden hour, you lose the golden hour if you have to transfer from Lewis Gale to Carilion. So there's very serious negative outcomes. I'd also like to highlight the nice map that that the opponents of the bill gave out. If you look in the whole western half of the state, there are only 2 top-level NICUs, one at Carilion and the other one at UVA. UVA does not even meet the number of birth standards that the opponents of my bill say should be required. So if we were to follow that approach, not even UVA would have their NICU, and I don't think anyone believes that that should be the case. So I would ask you to disregard this. It's not a real standard, but the one they suggested ought to be approached. I'd also point out, when you look at the whole western half of the state, you notice that the blue and pink on their map, that those are the higher level NICUs. It's the blue's the mid-level and the pink's the high level. And if you look at everywhere else around the state, you'll notice that there are high-level NICUs and mid-level NICUs near them. We're the only part of the Commonwealth that doesn't get to have an immediate NICU, which is the approach that's deemed the best everywhere else. And so I hope it'll be the pleasure of the committee to support that specific provision of the larger bill. Also, speaking to the larger bill, I'd point out that so many of these bills that you see today that were incorporated into the larger bill is what's been the top priority for several years now that we've been debating on why we wanted to see certificate of public need reform. And the folks that are opposed to this bill have opposed every approach to certificate of public need reform that we've tried in the Commonwealth. Sometimes we get a little support at the beginning, but by the time votes were coming, that support disappeared. And I think what we're led to today is trying to get those meaningful top priorities of reform. And one good thing about this approach is those of us that have concerns about certificate of public needs effect, and if it were changed significantly in rural areas, that no longer is a problem because we're approaching it by the specific jurisdictions that would be affected here. And I hope that it'll be the pleasure of the committee to support Senate Bill 266.
Senator Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you know, I've worked in this field for over 30 years. My background's in economics and public health, and actually worked for the Regional Health Planning Agency in Northern Virginia for over 30 years and reviewed these applications. I find it just extraordinary that we would consider substituting our judgment on individual applications, individual projects, for that of the Commissioner of Health, who has the experience, the requirements to be able to make these judgments and these determinations. What we have here is a situation where each of these applications, and I reviewed hundreds of these applications over many years, I spent hours and days and weeks reviewing each of these applications. And yet what we've had here is for a presentation, 12 minutes on each side, we now are going to be acting to make those decisions. I find it extraordinary that here with the 2 types of things that are referenced in all but one of these exemption applications, it says the commissioner shall approve this without a determination that a public need has been demonstrated. So what we in effect are saying is no longer do you need to have this project to meet public need, but the commissioner has to approve it. And the other one says no longer could the commissioner consider the effect on the operations of other facilities and how that would translate to impact upon the patients for that facility and the patients for that region. I can tell you that there have been a lot of efforts made on certificate of public need reform, and there was a recommendation that came out a couple of years ago. It's just that it was not accepted by those who wanted to get rid of certificate of need altogether. So that there was a recommendation as a result of an effort by Secretary Hazel and many others to come up with a proposal, and it was not the people who were opposing the bills today who were the problem. They were the ones who were supportive of this. What I can also say is that what you have here is a situation where we do have some issues in Virginia in terms of access to services. We particularly have some problems in some of the rural areas in terms of access to enough primary care services, enough basic level services to be able to meet the needs in those areas. Every single one of these applications that's in this block is from an urban area. They're from Hampton Roads, from the Richmond Planning District, from the Northern Virginia Planning District, and from the Roanoke-Salem area. So we're not addressing the fundamental issues we have in terms of access to care. What we're doing is adding to the existing services that are already extensive in the urban areas. In addition, what I would say is if you look at the types of applications, the types of projects that are proposed here, two stand out. If you look at what happens in terms of reimbursement for healthcare services, hospitals and others who are providing services are in a situation where the reimbursement system doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you get down to the granular level. There are a number of services that hospitals provide on which they make substantial profits. There are a number of services that hospitals provide on which they lose substantial amounts of money. The two that are the areas where the largest, or that are most profitable, are ambulatory surgery and diagnostic imaging. And those are the projects that people are seeking to have an exemption from the certificate of need law to implement here. So those, when you have that type of dynamics, in effect what you are doing is you are undermining the very hospitals that are providing all those services that lose money and making it difficult for them to continue those services. And we have already seen examples of hospitals throughout Virginia discontinuing some services because they can no longer support the losses that they incur in those services based upon the reimbursement rates that are there. The research and the evidence is extraordinary in terms of the impact of having unfettered operations of facilities, and also what you get with lower volume providers than higher volume providers. The research repeatedly shows that when you have higher volume services, you have lower unit cost and you have higher quality. One of the areas where this is clearly true, and was referenced by one of the speakers today, is in obstetrics. In obstetrics, those units that have higher volumes of services, after adjusting for birth weight, have significantly lower infant mortality rates than those facilities that have lower. What was referenced in the statement from the physician who spoke was a standard from the American Academy, or study from the American Academy of Pediatrics that talked about the lowest mortality rates being those facilities that have over 3,000 deliveries per year. I just happened to have done a study in Virginia several years ago, and what it showed was that there is a straight line decrease in mortality volumes correlated with the volume of services that are provided. Those facilities that did less than 500 births per year had the highest birth weight adjusted infant mortality during that first week. Those in between 500 and 1,000 had the next highest. Those between 1,000 and 1,500 had the next highest. And it goes all the way up to those over 3,000. So it makes a difference, not just in terms of lower cost, but also in terms of better outcomes and higher quality of care. There's also studies that clearly show that when you have more supply, guess what happens? There's more use of services, there are more dollars spent. So if you do not have some type of control on this, what you guarantee is that you will have more use and more expenditures that occur. In addition, some of these proposals represent, at least to some extent, a shifting from lower reimbursement, lower cost settings in a physician office to a higher cost setting, to a higher reimbursement service in an outpatient facility. So that there are significant issues related to that as well. Given all these factors, I think it would be highly inappropriate for us to, based upon very, very limited information, to be making these decisions for the Commissioner of Health as to what should be authorized, what should be approved, without a determination that there is a public need, and no longer considering the effect upon other providers and what it does to their patients and to their costs there. So I hope we would not support the bills as they're rolled together.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Okay. So just a couple of comments before we vote. One, I think that this committee has been very careful about both the meaningful COPN reform we've had last couple of years. We've worked very closely with the hospitals and with doctors to try to do that more responsibly. I'm proud of the Senate for the work we've done. One, we've also made sure that everyone was in the conversation. The Senate position has also been very careful with some of the rural hospital needs. I will note that the bill that came out of this committee a couple of years ago had the full support of Secretary Hazel and at the time the governor of Virginia, that would have made some, I think, meaningful COPN reform as well. Also, when you look at this bill as it relates to the question about general law and whether or not we can do this, I think the history is so clear it can't be really disagreed with. We have done this with this exact same language time after time after time, many times in the nursing home arena, and until we stopped doing this a couple of years ago because we were looking for a bigger solution. We did this in the same language we're doing it now. Also, each one of these bills is not ever specifically drawn to a particular practice, and we've been very careful as we looked over these bills as well. The agreed upon 12 minutes, I hope everyone is okay with the 12 minutes that we've heard from both sides. But make no mistake about it, we have been discussing and deliberating about this for about 5 years. So it has been a big issue. There are good people that are in favor of COPN. Senator Barker is probably as brilliant on this as anyone out there. This is somewhat of a little bit of a bill that lets some of the steam off and allows us to get toward a larger reform that may come in the form of a larger healthcare issue. But also about the language, just to be clear about the language, if you don't exempt from the commission the language related to with the public need, then the bills won't be effective. In other words, if you leave that requirement on there, then we do basically nothing. So I know that so many people are now saying that as a result of this bill, they're looking to work with us on the larger issue. How do we come back with a big bill that's more comprehensive? I just struggled personally a little bit with that because the last 2 years we've said we can't do comprehensive. If you want to relieve a certain problem, let's do that. Don't do comprehensive. And today it's all about we can't do anything that's piecemeal. We've got to do comprehensive. And so that's been a little bit of a struggle. And you'll forgive me for kind of having a couple comments. That's all my comments. Are there any more comments that anyone has? Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just need a little clarity here, okay? We rolled a bunch of bills into one vehicle, but let me ask you, and I'll use just my bill in particular as the question. Senate Bill 848, the substitute, basically sets up, a moratorium. Will that be? Are we going to vote on that particular part? Or what is this bill actually going to do?
Right. So, Senator, per the discussion earlier, we have rolled all the ones together that we've talked about. So yours will be in that group that we will send out of here, which includes Senator McClellan's bill, Senator Peterson's bill, your bill, Senator Donovan's bill, and Suderline's bill included in there.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other comments? If not, is there a motion? There's a motion and a second that the bills be agreed to. All those in favor will record your votes aye. No. No. Yeah. Okay. Those opposed, no, and the clerk will close the roll.
Yeas 8, nays 7.
Yeas 8, nays 7. The bill is reported. Thank you all for coming and working with us on that bill. All right, up next, we do have a couple more pieces. Senator Donovan, you've got a bill. Well, let's do the Vogel bill, and then we'll get to the other bills. Sturdivant, we'll take yours up separately, briefly. Senator Vogel, I made a mistake. I think I asked that your bill be carried over to next year because of a couple of concerns I have about this one as we read through it. Is there a motion to reconsider the vote by which we carried that bill over? So motion is second that bill, which is Senate Bill 842, the vote by which we carried it over for the year, be reconsidered. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And that bill is back before us. Senator, we're delighted to have you here. We're going to hear from you. We're going to hear maybe a couple of minutes of comments. You and I have talked a little bit about this bill. I like the concept of your bill, a couple little mechanical things we're going to continue to work through, but welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I was upstairs in finance, and I did not get here in time, and I appreciate your giving me the consideration. I also have a constituent who traveled some distance to be here. This is not unlike many of the bills that you've already heard. It's a COPN exemption bill. It provides an exemption for a new outpatient diagnostic imaging center providing services like MRIs and CT scans in Frederick County, Virginia. And the reason that it is important to my constituents is because, like all the constituencies that the other patrons have referred to, they are looking for more opportunity for more services at a lower cost. And it is a unique geographic area that Frederick County finds itself in because the constituents there that I serve are right on the border of Maryland and West Virginia, and they can leave Frederick County and go to Maryland and West Virginia, which is the case that many of those people find themselves in, where they are seeking services at a lower cost. So I had a number of comments I wanted to make, but I will not trespass on the committee's time. I think there is somebody here who could probably be more articulate and make a few points, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for coming down. Yes, Doctor, welcome, and we'll just give everyone maybe a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, and be glad to hear from you.
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Boyd, and I'm a radiologist for Progressive Radiology, a radiology group based in Northern Virginia in Falls Church. We've been in business for over 40 years, have 20 radiologists, and over 140 employees. I'm here to ask for your support for SB 842, sponsored by Winchester Senator Vogel, also supported by Winchester Delegate Collins. This bill will permit the Health Commissioner to grant a COPN for an MRI and a CT at our outpatient facility in Winchester. In 3 short weeks, Anthem will no longer be covering outpatient MRI and CT scans performed at hospitals. We estimate that 35% of Winchester patients are covered by Anthem. These patients need some other place to go besides Winchester Hospital very soon. This bill will give us the capacity to handle this large influx of outpatient imaging. Our office in Winchester has had great success. We provide patients with 3D mammography, ultrasound, X-ray, and biopsy at a fraction of the cost of the hospital. We see all patients. Winchester Delegate Collins and Roland Reisinger, Senator Vogel's legislative director, have seen for themselves our busy, friendly office in action. Currently, however, we have to send out MRIs and CTs to the hospitals or out of state to Hagerstown, Maryland, which is not optimal for patient care. There are no other independent outpatient imaging providers in Frederick County. Most of us know someone who's had an MRI. At Winchester Hospital, scans are a lot more expensive for patients. A common knee MRI at our office costs $450 versus $2,000 at the hospital. This substantial difference means a lot for Winchester patients, especially when high deductible plans are now the norm, and patients are facing a lot of these costs out of pocket. I don't know about you, but my deductible is $4,000. So if I slip and fall and need a knee MRI, I'm paying for the full cost of that scan out of pocket, whether it's $450 or $2,000, like thousands of other Virginia patients. At our office, you pay for the cost of your scan only. You receive only one reasonable bill.
Doc, I think we're going to about at 2 minutes. Is that pretty good
definition? Can I take 1 more minute? Would that be okay? I'll be fast. I'll make it worth your while, I promise.
A couple of seconds. Right?
Okay. At the hospital, you receive multiple high-priced bills, one from the hospital, one from the doctors, and so on. You subsidize other patients and other hospital expenses, and that is not fair to patients. Our imaging technology is high quality, equal or greater to the competition, including 3D mammography, breast tomosynthesis, which is cutting edge.
Okay.
Wait times at our office are shorter than the hospital. We can get you in the same day, next day. You go to the hospital, you wait 8 weeks for a breast ultrasound, and that is not fair for someone who has just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Competition is good for all patients. When we entered the market, Winchester Hospital responded by offering patients a sizable discount on their radiology studies. So just by virtue of us entering the market, we've already saved patients a lot of money, whether they've gotten their scans from us or not. Right, all Doc, we ask is a chance to fully compete in the Winchester market.
You've done a great job, and I'm so sorry that we had set the timer, but we had set a very aggressive timer for all the others, but we're very grateful, and Senator Vogel has been a very strong advocate for your position. We're grateful for that.
Thank you very much.
Are there those that are here to that have some concerns about the bill? If not, Senator Vogel, why don't you kind of sum up, and then we will I'll tell you about a couple. There's some technical issues with your bill that we've got to get through, and then we'll work our way through that. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I think, in summary, I would just echo the comments that have been made by the other patrons who have similar exemption bills, and that is that we're looking to do something better for the constituents that we represent. You heard his testimony about what's unique to Frederick County, and I would just ask that the members of the committee consider that. Thank you very much.
Right. So before we had a motion to continue the bill until 2019, and there are a couple of problems. One is a technical problem in regards to the regional areas, and we haven't figured out with staff how to fix that. The other one is that we have a problem with the fact that the only way we know to do it to help the people who are wanting to need help is to make the bill special legislation, and that really is a problem for the entire group of bills, and so that is a bit problematic. So, Senator, if the bill does not make it this year, continues next year, maybe I could continue to work with your doctor and others. We could find the way to try to relieve the need. So, if that is there a motion on the bill?
Move to continue the bill until next year.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second that the bill be continued until 2019, and we continue to work on the issue with the patron. All those in favor will record your vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 14, nays 1.
As 14, noes 1. The bill's continued over, and Senator Vogel, I
Thank you,
know
Mr.
how
Chair. We'll
passionate you
continue to
are.
work on
We'll
this.
work on this, and
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Doctor, thanks for coming. Thank you. Very good. Senator Sturtevant, we are going to hear from you. This is a bill we have heard a number of times as a standalone bill. This bill I didn't think reasonably could be put into the block because it is so different. Your bill is Senate Bill 757. Senator Sturtevant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just very briefly on this bill, it's an important one, I think, for this committee to consider. We've got a lot of challenges with regard to mental health access and treatment and substance abuse treatment access in Virginia. We've actually dropped here in the Commonwealth from 38th to 42nd for access to mental health treatment and care. Several of our public mental health hospitals lack bed space and consistently run at capacity. The Deeds Commission had an important meeting back in September where the Commissioner of the Department of Behavioral Health came and testified that our state hospitals are on the path to be overflowing by 2024. And one of the things he said was that business as usual with regard to mental health and substance abuse treatment is heading off a cliff here in Virginia. And despite that, despite the need for more mental health treatment and access, we all know the well-documented opioid crisis that affects many areas of the Commonwealth. We still allow potential competitors to block each other from increasing access to this type of care and treatment through the COPN process. And so this bill before the committee, Senate Bill 757, would remove from the COPN process mental hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, and intermediate care facilities that deal with the treatment of substance abuse. And so I think that this is an especially acute problem in Virginia right now, especially with regard to substance abuse issues, that this is a narrowly tailored area for COPN reform for the General Assembly to undertake this session. And one of the things that I learned in researching this was that over the last 10 or 15 years, there have been more than 100 psychiatric or mental health beds that have been denied in the Commonwealth through the COPN process. And so this is a way to, again, address a challenge that we face all throughout Virginia.
Good. Thank you very much, Glenn. Are there those that are here to speak in favor of the bill? I know we've heard it many times. We'd love to hear that those, and with the concurrence of both parties, we're going to set a 3-minute clock on this.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ralston King with the Medical Society, we are in support of this bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Others are here in support.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Stephanie Lynch. I represent our Medicaid managed care plans. We support this bill and thank Senator Sturtevant for his efforts, and want to just highlight and echo that this does have a very positive, or could have a very positive impact for our addiction recovery and treatment services benefit. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for coming. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, James Pickrell with the Psychiatric Society of Virginia. We appeared before you last year in support of the bill. We think anything that we can do to increase access to mental health treatment and substance use disorder treatment is something that we ought to do, and we would urge the committee to support the bill. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. And welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ann Hughes on behalf of this
Coalition to Reform Certificate of Public Need. I almost said it backwards. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alexander McCauley on behalf of the Virginia chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we support the bill.
Great. Thanks for coming by. Anyone else speak in favor of the bill? Seeing none, we will also set a 3-minute clock on those that have some concerns about the bill. If you come forward, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Elwood. I'm here representing Universal Health Services, who operate over 300 acute psychiatric beds in 5 different locations around Virginia: Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport News, Petersburg, and Leesburg. We're opposed to any efforts to carve out specific lines for deregulation, especially for this very sensitive population of patients. It's been presented that there's a shortage of beds or that applications are not being approved. That's not the case. In the last 5 years, there have been 21 COPN applications for acute psychiatric beds filed, the second highest number of applications for any service covered under COPN. These applications have added 326 new psychiatric beds over that period. Of those 21 applications, only 3 were denied, including one from a UHS facility. They resubmitted their proposal and got approved for more beds than they had originally asked for. There's not a shortage of psychiatric beds included in the 300 beds in the UHS system. As of Monday night, there were 92 vacancies within that system. UH system, going through the current COPN process, will be bringing 50 new beds online over the next 12 months. State hospitals may be nearing capacity, but they, by law, are required to be the hospital of last resort and must take patients when a bed cannot be found. For example, if a psychiatric patient has additional medical conditions, such as a need for dialysis, then we cannot take them. And this bill is not going to fix the problem for the state facilities. COPN is not perfect, but whatever needs fixing can be fixed through comprehensive COPN reform legislation, not specific carve-out of services. With me here today is Jamie Fernandez. She's the CEO of Kempsville Center for Behavioral Health, and she's also a member of the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association Board of Directors.
Great.
Thank you.
We're grateful you came today. Thank you very much. We still have about a minute. Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brent Rawlings from the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. We similarly have concerns about the legislation. Simply put, we don't think that removing these services from regulation under the COPN process will solve the problem that we have before the state. The Deeds Commission has looked at this continuously. The needs in our state are focused more around the need for community-based services, alleviating the need to have inpatient admissions in the first place. A number of our members, similar to Mr. Elwood's comments, do have capacity available in the state. The shortage of beds in the state hospital system does not equate to a shortage of beds in the system overall. There is capacity out there today. Historically also, again, with the comments that Mr. Elwood made, we do not have a large number of denials for COPN services. Where there are denials, it's taking into consideration what is the impact on a neighboring facility. And so why do we care about that? We care about that because what we're talking about is introducing a new market entrant for the purposes of potentially cannibalizing existing capacity, and that's something we need to avoid, and that's one of the purposes of the COPN program, why we support it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for being here today. Very good. Glenn, why don't you wrap up, and then we will vote.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we all know that there is a need for more access, more treatment, and this is a way to provide it. I'm happy to hear that many applications for additional beds are not being denied, but some still are. And this will, again, I think, help provide a streamlined process for additional access that is needed.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there questions to the senator about the bill? If Senator Barker, you want to speak, sir? Or you're good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I'd be happy to speak now. This is something we dealt with last year, and we defeated a bill that came forward last year, both Senator Sturdivant's and also Delegate Farrell's bill last year. And there are clear reasons for doing so. One, there is a clear capacity within the system right now in the private hospitals across the Commonwealth, both in psychiatric units within the acute care hospitals and some freestanding facilities as well. There is, as Senator Sturtevant referenced, some issues related to capacity at the state level and the state facilities. The state facilities are operating at a fairly high occupancy level right now. But first of all, the state facilities are not regulated by certificate of need. So if we wanted to provide funding to it, which we've done with recently expanding Western State Hospital, we can do that, and that it doesn't have to come through that. So it's not been that they were being denied any applications. They don't even have to file applications. The state facilities are clearly have been significantly impacted by the change we made related to temporary detention orders a few years ago, basically mandating that state facilities take patients if they're not an alternative placement that has been found. So that is clearly one of the factors that has influenced has affected state facilities. But there are also other factors that have affected state facilities that I think now are being addressed and are being addressed through some of the actions being taken by the Deeds Commission that I serve on, and Senator Howell and others serve on as well, and also that are being affected by changes in terms of the approach being implemented by the Department of Behavioral and Developmental Services. Part of the reason that a lot of people end up in a state hospital is that when they were willing to access services within the community for outpatient care and treatment, they were put on a waiting list. Many of these community services boards across the Commonwealth historically have had situations where someone called up and said, I have a mental health problem or I have a substance abuse problem. I'd like to get some evaluation and treatment of it. It'd be 3 to 4 weeks before the evaluation would be done. And by that, when that happens, often they don't come in for the appointment. And when that happens, often they end up in a crisis situation and end up being hospitalized as a result of not having gotten the preventative and primary mental health treatment. What is happening now is that we already have half of the community services boards are already implementing same-day access, and we're moving to have that done in the other half in the next fiscal year. So by the end of the next fiscal year, we will have all the community services boards providing access on the day that the individual calls, or if it's very late in the day, maybe the next day. That will make a huge difference in terms of the number of people who get into a crisis situation and end up needing to be hospitalized. The other problem we've had with patients at state hospitals is that we've not always had the capacity for them in the community when they were ready to leave the hospital. So we have patients who are staying in the state hospitals 1, 2, even 3 months longer than they need to stay because there's not a placement for them in the community. We are addressing that issue as well. Last year, we provided a substantial amount of funding for supportive housing services, which is one of the critical things that there's been a shortage of. If you do those types of things, you will have fewer people in the state hospitals. And that's what the commissioner has said to the Deeds Commission with the changes that we are making. We are turning the system around so that we're providing services early, when patients are ready to receive those services, when their need is identified, so that they get the care they need and don't end up in a crisis situation where they need to go into the hospital, and we're expanding the capacity to provide placements in the community. If you do those types of things, we will actually have far fewer patients in state hospitals than what we have right now. And this legislation is clearly, I think, not needed. One final thing I would say is just to give you an example of why a particular application might be disapproved. In Prince William County, which is part of my district, we have two community hospitals there. One has a psychiatric unit, the other does not. The one that has a psychiatric unit provides great services both at the hospital and supportive services throughout the community on an outpatient basis. But one of the things that happens when you have a psychiatric unit, the patients who are uninsured, who have a psychiatric issue, show up at your emergency department. And in Northern Virginia right now, 30% of the mental health patients coming to emergency departments are uninsured. Those patients frequently end up being hospitalized, and the hospital receives no reimbursement for them. In Prince William County, there was a proposal for a freestanding hospital that would not have had an emergency department, would have been a psychiatric mental health hospital, but they would not have taken all those 30% of patients who were coming to the other hospital. The community hospital already provides the psychiatric services. That would have left the community hospital with only, or not only, but largely with an uninsured patient population, and would have resulted in them losing millions of dollars every year, and extraordinary pressure would have been there to close that facility, which actually would have substantially decreased access rather than improving access. So I think there are compelling reasons why we need to keep this certificate of need review in place, and why it would be a mistake to support this bill.
Thank you, Senator Barker. Thank you for bringing up also same-day access. I know you and Senator Howell worked with that for a good while. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just simply say, speaking in favor of the bill, that I really think what we have been doing has not been working. And that's the strain that is being shown in so many of the pieces of legislation that are coming forward this year and the past several years. I would propose, if there's a dilutional effect on the market, that the market will correct that. And it's true, not all of the issues with access have to do with beds. It has to do with staffing, and it has to do with other things. But I don't, I admire Senator Barker's optimism on where we're going. I don't think we're there yet. I'm still deeply concerned even with the proposals that we have in place. I will say I think there are other things besides this legislation that we're looking at to help the state hospitals. But I think it's time, if we have Amazon getting in the game to figure out this problem for us, I think we can handle a market competition.
Very good. Is there a motion on the bill? Move to report. There's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. Senator Slaslaw may need to be voted here. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 8, nays 7.
All right, ayes 8, nays 7. The bill's reported. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Stanley, you have two bills that are up. One of them was in Senator Carrico's subcommittee related to robotics. If you take that one up, and Senator Carrico, I'll call on you just as a refresher.
Mr. Chairman, there's an amendment in the nature of a substitute for
I'd
Senate
move
Bill
the
169.
substitute. All right, there's a motion and a second that the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Substitute's agreed to. Senator Stanley.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 169 pertains to robotics in our high schools. As this committee may know, it passed a bill of mine 2 years ago that is now law, where we are creating in underserved, underprivileged areas where children are at high schools and middle schools with free and reduced lunch over and above 75%. We're getting grants to start robotics clubs. What we're finding is robotics are engaging students in a way in the STEM H disciplines that we've never seen before. And that what we're seeing also is that those children that are, and young men and women that are participating in the robotics courses are then going on to college at a higher rate, are going into the fields that are the necessary fields for the 21st century, engineering, mathematics, in those disciplines. And so what is important is that we recognize the importance of robotics in the state. This substitute clearly says that the VHSL, by the year 2021, will establish a varsity level robotics team competition program. But nothing in this section, in this law, does not require any high school to establish a robotics team. So what we're doing is, what's happened in Minnesota, they've done this, and you've seen an explosion not only in robotics and participation, but also higher test scores, more engagement in the public colleges and universities by these students, and a lot more companies coming in that are using the robotics programs in almost pre-training what will be their future worker. I have seen robotics at the level in Martinsville, Henry County. Our Martinsville girls team went to the national championships and placed very well. What I have noticed is this, and why I say that I believe this is important in a varsity level to recognize this. I played sports. I'm sure Senator Peterson played sports. We always thought we were going to go pro. But when I stopped growing, which was really early, my chances of going professional in the sport that I loved was zero. Every single one of these students can go pro that participates in robotics. And we're talking about a game changer, I think, for them in their lives. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee.
Great. Is there any question about the substitute?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
You know, I've suffered through conversations where I'm intellectually out-challenged or outmatched, but this one I actually know a little bit about, which is to say high school athletics. And the thing that concerns me, Senator Stanley, is VHSL, Virginia High School Sports League, is a nonprofit. It's run by volunteers. People on the board, they serve for free. And they do it because they love sports. And we're telling them to recognize a competition because, and I think robotics is great. James Madison has an award-winning team. Thomas Jefferson does. But what about chess club? What about science fair? I mean, we do all sorts of things And I think we're taking what is an athletic competition. What are we going to put it in the Olympics next? I mean, we're taking an athletic competition and we're telling them what athletics should be. Again, these are volunteers. It's a nonprofit. We don't subsidize these folks. And so where do we get off telling a nonprofit how to run their league?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentleman by saying I think when we're talking about something like robotics, this is something compelling and 21st century and different. It may be out of the norm of what we thought of baseball and football, but governments do direct these organizations in certain ways. Title IX is one example that we should have equal representation in terms of sports for both young men and young women. So it is not unheard of, and what we're trying to do here is actually get on the cutting edge of having more participation in what is, quite frankly, more important than when I learned to hit a curveball.
All right, Senator Peterson.
One last question, and I appreciate the reference to Title IX, which is a federal law, but that has to do with funding. Title IX has to do with funding. It doesn't direct people to have state championships. So if it's a matter of funding a robotics club, I'd be all for it. But again, I believe we're telling an amateur athletic organization how to run their own business. And so I love robotics. I like you, but I don't like this bill.
All right. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not often that I actually agree with Senator Peterson, but and I like him too. The only problem is this really, VHSL is a sports organization. All right, now we're looking to put robotics, and understand, I'm an engineer, okay? So nobody up here is going to appreciate robotics more than I am. But at the same time, I think trying to put this particular event in with the Virginia High School League is it's a Christmas tree that's going to grow by leaps and bounds. Because next year, somebody's going to want to put the chess club in, and then somebody's wanting to put the French club in. And you can just see where that will go. And so with all due respect to the patron, I just don't think the VHSL is the right place for something like this.
Senator Locke.
When we were in subcommittee, the question was raised with regard to, doesn't this cover things like debate? Isn't this included in the league, drama?
This bill?
No,
The
the
substitute
league.
took it out.
The substitute took it out. I mean, this totally changed it. It's robotics. It's a funnel to.
No. That's not my question.
I'm sorry.
My question is, doesn't the league cover other things beyond sports?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer Senator Locke by saying absolutely does. So we're not limited to just field hockey and football and those things. They do cover other things such as robotics and debate and that. So yes, Senator Locke, you're exactly right. It's not just limited to when you wear a uniform and play outside.
Okay. Senator Suderline. Did that complete your questions?
Thank you, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Senator Locke just made one of the points I just wanted to make sure that it was clear is that Virginia High School League does do lots of things, as the senator knows, and robotics is something that the Virginia High School League is working on right now. At the last two meetings, there's been discussion. It's been on the formal agenda. At one of the meetings, there was discussion, and I can tell you just among those of us on the board, at both meetings, there was discussion amongst us. I think I'm very confident that, and I'm only one member, and you see how effective I am here, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to have this by the time that this bill envisions. I also like the patron, and I like Senator Peterson too, but I'm not sure this is the best approach, because I think we're going to do it, and if I'm still here and this isn't done by then, I'm happy to work with you for it. But I think it's going to be. It's expensive, like Senator Stanley said, but it's widely recognized that this is a really good investment. In my district, we've also got robotics teams, and the kids that compete in this, they learn so much about it, and it's fantastic. So I think that the bill's a good idea in what we're trying to do. I just don't think the bill's the right way to do it. And I appreciate Senator Stanley's, looking out for our kids in Southwest and Southside on robotics.
Okay. This bill came through subcommittee, so there won't be a public hearing on this as we had there. Senator Chase and then Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Try that again.
I guess I don't understand what the disadvantage would be of approving this. It gives more opportunity to the kids. So I'm probably going to be supporting this.
Great. Senator Carrico.
Just real quickly, the substitute, as you recall in subcommittee, in the original bill, it required the school divisions to establish a team or they couldn't participate in a VSHL program. The substitute addressed that. It takes out them having to establish a team and not penalize them for not being able to participate in the VSHL sport. So I would just make the motion that we report Senate Bill 169 as the substitute.
Okay. This motion is second to bill be reported. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 8, nays 7.
Ayes 8, nays 7, the bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Senator,
committee who
do you
voted
mind
for it.
taking up the House bill while we're here?
Yes, sir.
To get that off our docket.
Mr. Chairman, the House bill is just the other version, and exactly so as it pertains to the Patrick County Hospital and giving ourselves an opportunity to reopen the Patrick County Hospital. What the bill does is exactly what the other one does, which is to retroactively allow for the certification and credentialing and COPN, and you guys are laughing. Okay, good.
It's House Bill 175 for those that
And so basically what it does is it allows for the credentialing to go on for a year. I can tell everybody and the members of the committee that since that time, we have been in discussions with healthcare operators. We've been in discussions with American Electric Power about keeping the building going, VCC, to make sure they didn't mothball it, and the water issues. So we're going, and even our school system, our superintendent, Dr. Schroof, has sent his team in to make sure that there's no mold and to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And so we're working really hard to get an operator for this hospital, and this is the piece on the House side that would allow us to keep that credentialing going.
Okay, great. There's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. Is that correct? Is there a motion? Maybe I better look for that motion. Can I have a motion to report? All right, there's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor will record your votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
15-0, the bill is reported. Thank you, Senator Stanley, for coming
Thank
by.
you. And Mr. Chairman, I had the K through 3 school discipline bill. Has that been reported?
Which one is that?
The discipline bill,
Yes.
school discipline.
We took care of that. It's all good.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good. With that, there is, if I could get the committee's attention, there's one more bill left, and that's Senator Donovan's bill. Senator Donovan, why don't you take us through 637, and I think we can end up a little early today.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's an amendment.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Donovan, line 19, after worked, insert as available. Same line after code, insert as available.
Is there a motion on the amendment? There's a motion and second that the amendment be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. And the amendment's agreed to. Senator Donovan.
Mr. Chairman, we have a remarkable Virginia longitudinal data system that looks at data for our higher ed and helps us make decisions on how to proceed for all things, efficiency, graduation rates, costs, many different variables. Some of the variables which we lack are the ability to connect a degree to employment and even residence in Virginia. And by adding and having Chev get together with, with this longitudinal database representative and some of the other agencies in the state, like DMV and tax, we're going to be able to connect those dots and get better data to us so we can make better higher ed decisions.
Are there questions on the bill? We have not heard this. Is anyone here to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? There's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. And the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, nays 0.
Ayes 15, nays 0, the bill is reported. Now, just briefly, that completes our Senate docket, and we've got a little extra time. But the one item I would mention is the subcommittees will start meeting this week on the House bills. There's a lot of them. This year, as some of you know, we used to have about 120 bills in this committee. It moved up to 150 bills. This year, 177 bills, nothing like it. that we've considered this year. And the House is sending us a lot of stuff. So we're going to have to start on those early. And if you wouldn't mind getting busy, I've already appointed to many of the subcommittees a lot of bills to your subcommittee.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Carrico.
with that clarification, what everyone thought was not going to be a meeting this afternoon, there is. So we have
Yes.
several bills on the docket.
Apparently, the higher ed subcommittee, which is supposed to meet today, Senator Chase, Senator Peterson, he's not here, and Senator Cosgrove and Senator Black, we're not going to meet this afternoon because we don't have the bills yet.
Okay. With that, thank you all for your participation, and the committee will rise.